I thought you would have finished by now." For about 2 seconds, nothing happens on the outside. Your face stays calm. You may even smile and nod, but inside you, something has already changed. Your chest feels warm. Your jaw becomes tight. A sharp reply begins to form in your mind. It is usually much better than anything you would actually say out loud. 8 hours later, while lying in bed, you can still remember those exact words. You remember them more clearly than almost anything else that happened that day. Most people call this being too sensitive, having thin skin, or having a big ego. They probably did not mean anything. But what happened during those 2 seconds was not simple sensitivity. It was not arrogance either. It was an alarm. An alarm is not a personality problem. It is a system doing the job it was designed to do. The real question is not why the alarm is so loud. The real question is, what have you asked it to protect? Welcome back to Mind Dose. Today, we are going to explore the psychology of the ego, especially the moment when we feel offended. We will look closely at that hot 2-second space between what someone says and what you feel. We will understand why the reaction begins, why small comments can create the strongest reactions, and how to stop giving strangers control over your entire day. Before we continue, we need to make one thing clear. This is not about Freud's idea of the ego, the ID, and the superego. We are going to explore something more practical, easier to observe, and more connected to everyday life. What are you really trying to defend? Psychology has a name for this process. It is called threatened egotism. For many years, people believed that aggression came from low self-esteem. They believed people attacked others because they secretly felt worthless. This idea appeared in parenting books, school programs, and popular psychology. Then in 1998, researchers Brad Bushman and Roy Baumeister tested this idea in a laboratory. First, they measured people's self-esteem. Then they allowed a stranger to criticize their writing. After that, they gave the participants a chance to respond. The results were surprising. Low self-esteem did not predict who would react aggressively. Something else did. The strongest reactions came from people who had a positive opinion of themselves and then felt that this opinion had been attacked. The reaction did not come from self-hate. It came from threatened self-love. You do not always feel offended because you believe you are nothing. Sometimes you feel offended because something important in your identity has been touched. But why does a simple comment feel like an emergency? Psychologist Mark Leary's research can help explain this. He introduced an idea called the sociometer. According to this idea, self-esteem is not a prize that you carry around. It is more like a gauge with a moving needle. Its job is to measure how accepted, respected, and valued you seem to be by the people around you. For most of human history, losing your place in the group was dangerous. Being rejected was not only an uncomfortable feeling, it could threaten your survival. This system is also not balanced. Rejection pulls the needle down faster than acceptance pushes it up. When someone makes a painful comment, your mind is not immediately asking, "Is this person correct?" It is asking a much older question. Did my position in the group just become weaker? Then something unusual happens to your sense of self. Research by Critcher and Dunning explains this process. When your identity feels threatened, your view of yourself becomes smaller. Normally, you can remember many different parts of who you are. But during a threat, most of those parts disappear from your attention. The one part being criticized becomes larger until it fills your whole mind. You become smaller at the exact moment when you need to remember the full size of your life. Psychologist William James wrote that a person's identity includes more than their body. It can include their work, name, reputation, relationships, achievements, and possessions. In a way, you draw a fence around certain parts of the world and label everything inside that fence as me. Feeling offended is the alarm attached to that fence. This means the strength of your reaction is not only about the person who made the comment. Your reaction also shows how much of your identity is inside that fence and how close you were standing to the part that was touched. Most people do not consciously choose where to build this fence. It usually begins forming early in life. It is shaped by whatever you learned people would use to judge your value. Maybe you were known as the intelligent child. Perhaps the praise you received was not about effort, courage, or kindness. It was always about how quickly you understood things. So, you learned that being intelligent was what made you valuable. Maybe you were known as the good child. You were calm, quiet, and easy to manage. You learned not to create more problems in a home that already had enough of them. Maybe you grew up in a home where one wrong answer could change the mood of the entire room. So, you learned to carefully avoid giving the wrong answer. Whatever your experience was, you learned that one quality was especially valuable. You built your identity around it. You created a small but important piece of identity and built a very high wall around it. That is not weakness. A person who gets offended easily does not always feel too much. Sometimes that person is simply standing very close to the only identity they were ever told they could have. How does this appear in adult life? Here are 5 reasons we get offended so easily. The first reason is that you become as small as the comment. Imagine that your manager reviews a 40-slide presentation that took you 2 weeks to create. Your manager says only one negative thing about slide 11. For the next hour, you forget that you have 10 years of professional experience. You forget your family, your friendships, your skills, and the language you taught yourself. For that moment, you become only one thing, the person who made a mistake on slide 11. That mistake becomes your entire identity. This is what happens when your view of yourself becomes smaller under pressure. The criticized part becomes so large that everything else disappears. You probably do not truly believe that one slide defines your whole life. But in that moment, the rest of your identity is not available in your mind. This creates a specific problem. You can no longer judge the feedback clearly. When you become as small as the criticism, agreeing with 2% of it feels like agreeing with all of it. So, you reject all of it. You defend slide 11 as if you are defending your home. The second reason is that you give the ruler to people you do not even know. A stranger leaves a negative comment under something you posted. You have never met this person. You would never ask them for advice. You do not know their experience, their values, or even their last name. But their comment still affects you. You feel it inside your body. That is your internal social gauge doing its job. It is not a logical system. It developed during a time when the people around you were probably the only people you would ever know. Because of that, the system never learned to check someone's knowledge or importance before reacting to their opinion. It does not ask, does this person understand me? Is their opinion useful? Would I normally trust their judgment? It only notices a sign of rejection and moves the needle down. The problem is that there's no filter. A person whose advice you would never accept in real life can write 4 words about you. Then, you carry those 4 words around for an entire week. The third reason is that comments usually hurt where you already have doubts. Imagine someone tells you that you are a terrible juggler. You would probably feel nothing. You might even laugh. You have not built your identity around juggling, so the comment has nowhere important to land. But imagine someone calls you selfish. Several days later, you may still be thinking about it. An insult cannot create a deep reaction by itself. It often needs help from something already inside you. The words enter your mind, and a quiet part of you says, "Yes, I have worried about that too." The emotional heat is not only the sound of someone attacking you, it is the sound of a private fear receiving another vote. This leads to an important idea. You are not always offended by what people say about you. You are often offended by what you are afraid might be true. The problem is that most people misunderstand their own reactions. They believe their strongest reactions only prove that other people are cruel. But those reactions can also show where they still have unfinished emotional work. Every subject that creates strong heat may point to something you have not fully accepted or understood yet. The fourth reason is that you turn the wound into a principle. This part may feel uncomfortable, but stay with it. You may not want to say, "That hurt me." Saying that means admitting that the comment affected you. It means allowing other people to see that your emotional wall moved. So, instead, you change the meaning of the situation. You do not say that the comment was painful. You say it was disrespectful. You do not call it a careless comment. You call it an attack. You do not describe it as a feeling. You describe it as a boundary being crossed. Now you are no longer a person who feels hurt. You are a person defending an important standard. This allows you to react as strongly as you want, while still seeing yourself as the good person. Good. Psychology has a name for part of this process. Hostile attribution bias. It means we sometimes see harmful intentions in situations that are not completely clear. Once you decide that someone wanted to hurt you, your reaction no longer feels like revenge. It feels like justice. Turning the situation into a moral issue gives you protection. People cannot easily call you sensitive when you are busy defending a principle, but be honest with yourself for a moment. How much of what you call disrespect is simply something that hurt you? Think about the last 5 arguments you repeated in your mind while lying in bed. How many of them were truly about right and wrong? How many were about someone touching an emotional wall and you needing a stronger reason to fight back? The cost of this pattern is very high. You lose the ability to understand the difference between being treated unfairly and feeling emotionally hurt. These things can happen together, but they are not always the same. The people closest to you slowly learn that they cannot give you honest feedback. Every comment becomes a moral accusation. They do not stop noticing your problems. They only stop talking to you about them. The fifth reason is that you build your whole identity on one pillar. Some people build everything around being intelligent. Whenever they do not know something, they feel threatened. They would rather pretend to understand than say, "I have never heard of that." Other people build their identity around being reliable. Some build it around being a good parent, never needing help or always remaining calm. The identity changes, but the structure is the same. The basic idea is simple. The fewer things you include in your identity, the more damage one negative comment can cause. The same sentence can affect 2 people in completely different ways. The damage depends on how many other parts of themselves they can still remember. The problem is not only that you become more reactive, your life also becomes smaller. You slowly stop doing anything you might be bad at because making mistakes now feels dangerous. The intelligent person stops learning in front of other people. The reliable person stops admitting that they are tired. The calm person stops expressing difficult emotions. The pillar must always be protected, so the whole life is built around that pillar. Over time, life becomes narrower and narrower. This is the trade you may not realize you are making. Now, step back and look at the purpose of this entire system. It exists to protect your position and stop you from feeling small, but look at what it actually creates. Because of this system, one careless sentence from a stranger can destroy your evening. Because of this system, you need approval from people whose opinions you do not even respect. Because of this system, the people who love you may have the least access to the real you. They are close enough to notice the truth, but they also know how strongly you may react when they speak about it. You built a wall to stop yourself from feeling small, but that same wall allows anyone with a keyboard and 4 free seconds to make you feel small. So, what can you actually do? First, we need to understand what will not work. You cannot simply decide not to feel offended. That is the main problem. The emotional heat arrives before your conscious decision does. By the time you tell yourself not to take it personally, the reaction has already happened. You are only trying to control the damage afterward. Telling yourself not to feel offended is like telling yourself not to jump when a door suddenly slams behind you. The reaction does not wait for your permission. The goal is not to force yourself to feel nothing. The goal is to build a larger sense of who you are. The first principle is to make your identity wider before the difficult moment arrives. When you feel threatened, your view of yourself becomes smaller. This means the version of you making decisions in that moment is the smallest version of you. That is the worst time to depend only on logical thinking. You need to do the work before the moment happens. Spend real time developing at least 3 different areas of your life that are unlikely to fail on the same day. These should not be hobbies you only mention when someone asks about your interests. They should be real parts of your life where you are actively involved. This is not about trying to become perfect in many different areas. It is about building a stronger structure. When your identity has several strong parts, one comment can only affect a small part of the whole picture. There is also something you can do during the difficult moment. When you feel the emotional heat, name 2 true things about yourself that the comment did not touch. This helps because it brings back the parts of your identity that disappeared from your attention. Research on self-affirmation suggests that this does not work because you are giving yourself a motivational speech. Critcher and Dunning found that a simple exercise in seeing the bigger picture could reduce defensiveness, even without positive statements. The exercise works because it helps you remember that the threatened part is not your whole identity. The second principle is to separate the pain from the judgment. Every painful comment creates 2 different questions. Does this hurt? And is this true? Most people answer these questions as if they are the same question. That is why criticism can feel so expensive. If the comment hurts, you decide it must be false or unfair. If the comment is true, you decide that you must be completely worthless. Separate these questions and answer them at different times. Give yourself full permission to feel hurt. Your internal alarm is allowed to ring, but do not allow the alarm to decide whether the comment is accurate. Wait for 24 hours. Then ask yourself one question. If the person I trust most had said these exact words in a kind voice, would I still call it an attack? Sometimes the answer will be yes. In that case, the comment may truly have been cruel or unfair, but very often, the answer will be no. That gives you useful information about yourself, not only about the other person. The third principle is to take the ruler back. Decide in advance whose judgment you truly trust. Keep the list very short. Choose 3 or perhaps 4 people. Choose people who understand your work, have seen you during difficult moments, and gain nothing from giving you false praise. Everyone else is still allowed to have an opinion. You can listen to them. You can read their comments. You may even learn something useful from them. But they are not allowed to make final decisions about your value because you never gave them that authority. Your internal social gauge will still react. Mark Leary's needle does not have an off switch. You should not want to completely turn it off either. That same system helps you care about relationships and other people. But you can choose which opinions deserve your attention. and which ones should guide your actions. When you practice these principles, something slowly changes. It may not be the change you expected. The alarm does not become completely silent. You will still feel emotional heat. Anyone who says they never feel offended is probably being dishonest or has stopped caring about everything. Not caring about anything is not a healthy solution. The real change is that you stop making the wall higher. Instead, you make the land inside it wider. When the land is wide, a comment that once hit your wall now lands somewhere in the middle of a much larger space. You still notice it, but you can watch it happen without immediately fighting against it. You can hear something unfair without feeling that you must correct it. You can hear something true without treating it as a final judgment on your entire life. You become genuinely difficult to insult. This does not happen because you stop caring about what people think. It happens because there is more to you than there was before. One sentence can no longer cover your whole identity. Writer David Foster Wallace described something he called our default setting. It is the automatic belief that we are at the center of everything, and that everything happening around us is somehow about us. Nobody chooses this setting. We are born with it. His point was that the work of adult life is not to completely turn this setting off. The work is to notice when it is active. Almost nothing that happens during your day is truly aimed at you. The driver who cuts in front of you may be late. Your friend's short reply may come after a terrible night of sleep. Your colleague's cold voice during a meeting may be connected to a bill they cannot afford to pay. Many things you experience as personal attacks are only difficult moments passing through someone else's life. Each of us received an identity we did not design. We received a shape we did not choose. Then we were told to protect it for the rest of our lives. Feeling offended is not a personal failure. It is the sound of an old protection system doing its job too strongly. It is protecting a piece of emotional land that may have been drawn too small many years ago. You are allowed to make that land bigger. Of the 5 reasons we explored, which one belongs to you? Do you become as small as the comment? Do you give the ruler to strangers? Does the comment touch something you already fear might be true? Do you hide your emotional wound behind a principle? Or have you built your entire identity on one pillar? Share your answer in the comments and be honest. The reason that made you react most strongly is often the one you need to examine. If you recognized yourself in more than one reason, that is not a bad sign. Almost everyone watching this has at least one of these patterns. You are not alone, and you are not broken. If this video helped you understand yourself more clearly, like it and send it to someone who has been carrying one painful sentence for weeks and has not been able to let it go. This video may help them finally put it down. Thank you for spending this time with Mind Dose. Subscribe and turn on notifications so we can continue exploring the hidden systems of the mind together. Goodbye, and I will see you next time.